All right, perfect. So now we are recording. Okay. Uh, as I told you, I will start with the first lecture, just fast review. So not first lecture, I'm sorry, last week lecture. So in this lecture we covered the material, starting with C++, installing environment IDE, compilers, linking code, source files, and simple example. So we'll go directly, of course, what is C++ or the features of C++. All of them, you need to go and read them. In general, C++ is a general purpose programming language which is widely used in many applications and in many programming, like even writing operating systems, writing new programming languages, writing libraries. So it's very important to learn C++. Preparing your program, I'll start from here. So in order to start programming, you need to know how to prepare your program. You need, of course, the first thing you need is the editor. The editor, any text editor. Of course, there are a lot of editors, and I will show you some of them, to write your code here. So you will write your code using editor. Okay. After that, this code, of course, is written in high-level language. Okay. High level means a language that you can understand. As a human, you can understand this language. But there's a problem. The machine cannot understand this problem. Why? Because as you are aware, that machine can understand only zeros and ones, right? So in this case, I need something to translate this program into a suitable format that the machine can understand. Okay, so I will send this to something called compiler. Okay, the compiler here has several duties, like first, C++ is high-level language. This is just to explain this, designed to give you a wealth of language facilities and be readable for you and other developer. That means when you write, for example, in C++ integer x that you can understand, here you are defining a variable x of type integer, but the machine doesn't understand this. Okay, and any other programmer, any other person who knows C++ will understand this. When you write, for example, if statement, if x greater than 5, you will understand that the meaning of this is you are testing the condition, if x is greater than 5 or not. But also the machine doesn't understand this. So the compiler will translate these into a language that the machine can understand. But here I have different kind of machine. I have Windows, I have Unix, I have Linux, etc. In this case, the compiler will provide me with something called object files. In the next slide, everything will be clear. The object file need to be linked with the operating system to generate the executable file. So all these things will be clear in the next slide here. But first, let's read the notes here. The computer processor execute low-level code, and it is the purpose of the compiler to translate C++ to the processor machine code. A single compiler may be able to target several types of processor, and if code is standard C++, it can be compiled with other compiler that support other processors. So the compiler itself will consider compiler. You have your source code. We call this source. Okay. We'll consider the processor, the operating system, and will translate. The processor only. We'll translate it to an object file, which can be then linked to be executable file. So I'll write this I'll draw it in a more appropriate way. Just I want you to understand the idea now. Okay, the compiler compiles C++ code, and it will issue a compiler error if some if comes across an error in your code. For example, when you start writing, you'll see that. For example, if I write, for example, integer x equal 5, then the compiler will come and take every single item in this and check if there's an error. It will find that it's perfect, nothing error, but at the end you will get an error because every instruction in C++ should end with semicolon. So you will get an error. The compiler will give you an error telling you that semicolon is missing. All right. It's important to point out that the code you write can be perfect C++, but it means the compiler can see the code is perfect and no error are there, but it's useless. It's nonsense. For example, if you write a code, for example, integer x equal 5, okay, C out high. All right, it's perfect. No errors are there, but what's the meaning of this code? You will find that this code is meaningless. So there are two types of errors. The errors that found by the compiler, which are the syntax, we call them syntax error here. Okay, this is the syntax error. If you miss a semicolon, if you any mistakes in writing the instructions will be syntax. We have another kind of error, which is logic error. We will talk about it later. Okay, but the logic error cannot be detected by the compiler. The compiler can detect only syntax error. Okay, the syntax checking of the compiler is an important check of your code, but you should always use other checking. Compiler can also issue warning. What is the difference between warnings and errors? For example, if you write integer x equals 5, integer y equals 7, C out x, then you will get a warning. The warning is that you have declared a variable called y, but you never used it. So it's a warning. This is wasting a resource, or you are wasting your resources. So this is warning, but with warning you can execute the program. With error you cannot execute the program, and everything will be explained to you practically now. Okay. Now after this, as I told you, it's better to start from here. Here you have something called header files. What are the header file? What the header file are is previously written code. Somebody or some expert or some people write some code, okay, and call it library, and put them in a header files. Header means at the top, okay. Header files. You can call them, you can use them directly by in your source code. By the way, your work will be here only. This is already written. Okay, the rest will be the responsibility of the compiler and the linker and etc. So you as a programmer will work only here in the source file, which the extension is CPP. Okay, the header file already written. So for example, if you want to use math functions, then you don't need to write all the equation. You can use this instruction, include. I don't know what's wrong with this stylus. Include, okay, C math. That's it. That means you can use all the functions which are written here in C math, like sine, cosine, log, etc. All of these functions are defined and debugged here in this file, the header file called math.hpp. All right, you can use it directly. Here you can use it directly. Now, after you finish, you say, all right, I'm done. Then you will send it to the compiler to compile the code. The compiler will check if there's an error, if there's some mistakes, if there are some warning. Now, after it finish, if it will ask if there's error, okay, if it detects some errors, it will send it back to you to telling you correct the errors and compile it again. If no error, then if it didn't find any error, then it will send it to it will generate something called object file .obj, okay, and send it to the linker. Now the linker will check the operating system. All right, link the object file with the operating system and give you executable file with extension exe. So this is the entire process of preparing your program. And again, your role or you will work only here. All right, the rest will be the responsibility of the machine, of the computer itself. So when you prepare your program, first you need to ask yourself, what header files do I need? What libraries I need? Okay, you will find, for example, if you need math, if you need IO, etc. Okay, then you include the appropriate library into your code. After that, you write your code and send it for compilation. If the compiler, everything is all right, then the compiler will proceed and generate object files, then send it to the linker and the executable. If there some error are identified, then it will send it back to you, telling you correct the error and send it back to me. I think it's very clear. All right. So this is the role of the linker, and we explained this linking in the previous lecture. Now your first program, and we will execute it practically. The program here is very simple program. You may ask what these things are. All right. While the only part you are going to write is this. So why we need to write all these things? First of all, use the standard library IOStream. Here, as I told you in the previous slide, you need to include the library that you need. Here, I'm going to use cout and cin. That means I need IOStream. These are members of IOStream. All right. So in all programs that use cout cin, it means cout writing to screen and cin reading from keyboard. All right, we'll take this, we'll discuss these instructions. So here I have to use include IOStream to use cout and cin. Now using namespace std, I'm using this to avoid the complication of writing the code. I need to change the color. What are these complications? These are not a complication, or rather they are annoying. For example, when you write cout, if you don't use this, you have to write it like this: std : 2 times cout. Okay. If you use cin, you have to write std cin. Okay, and so on. So to avoid using this repeatedly, I prefer to use this instruction that you can use cout directly. Okay, so this part will be included in all of your program. This part also. Now, integer main and this parenthesis. this done. Now, every C++ should have a main function. All right. Every C++ program should have main function and should have only one. No program, no code can have more than one main function. So I have only one main function and it has to be here. This parenthesis or curly braces means start of the code, beginning, and end of the code. So when I open it like this is the start and this is the end. Okay, that and what's written inside is called block of code. Libraries, this is the last part of this. We explained the header file. When you include a file within your source, like here, include IOStream. All right. That means you include all the code written in this file in your code. The code within that header file will be accessible to you. You include file. Your included file may contain whole function or class definition. So you don't know what's written there. you need to use the functions, but in advanced stages, you may need to open and see what's written there, what they contain. Although it's highly not recommended. I don't recommend you to open the header file because this IO stream you'll find IO stream dot ch or dot h. Let me just make sure of the HPP. Okay, HPP. H stands for header, PP plus plus. All right. You can open it. You'll find code written in C, but it's highly recommended not to open it. So library code that has already been defined, it's been debugged. Debugged means tested, and all the bugs, all the errors have been corrected and fixed, and therefore users do not need to have access to the source file. The C++ standard library is mostly shared via header files. All right, so this is all what we've discussed last class. Now let's go to the second class or today's class. In today's class, we are going to discuss about understanding language features, the use of white space, formatting the code, writing a statement, using type and variable. By the way, this will not covered in this lecture only. It will continue for 2, 3, 4 lectures. Okay, using constant and literals, using namespaces, C++ scoping of variables. All right, so the first part, I prefer to start writing the code. So as I told you, the links are there. Include IOStream. This is done using namespace. I'll remove this. I don't need it. It's something else. So integer main. Okay. Here I'll write a message. Cout. Hi there. I'm writing code. All right. Now, I will intentionally leave I will add some errors, or I'll force the compiler to give me error. Now, if you can see here, I didn't put the semicolon here. As I told you, everything should end in semicolon, except, of course, the functions. This will be explained to you. Now, if I execute it, all right, see what I'll get or what I got. This is the error from the compiler. Error expected semicolon before this, and here you have an arrow showing that you need to insert semicolon here. All right, So if I go there and add the semicolon as recommended and execute the program, then I will not get error. Here I'll get, hi there, I'm writing C++ code. Okay. This simple program, of course, if I remove this semicolon, all right, mistakenly, then I'll get some error. See, using namespace std here, semicolon, integer main, the same error, expected semicolon before integer. All right, I'll show you some other kinds of errors. By the way, C++ is case sensitive. What's the meaning of case sensitive? It means C out like this is not equal to capital C out. Now, if I execute this, I will get an error telling me that C out is undeclared identifier, or I don't know what C out is. All right, let's run it. See, C out was not declared in this scope. Why? Because C is capital letter. All right, so I'll go back, convert it to small c. That's why you have to write the instruction exactly as required. Now I don't have any errors, so everything is fine. So this is your first program. Okay. Very well. Let's get back to our discussion. All right. I think we are, yes. Now the comments. Sometimes you need to write a message to yourself or to other programmers or to other people who are going to write your code. So we call this a comment. A comment might be a single line or multiple line. If it's a single line, then it's enough to put double slashes like this in front of the line, then it will remove it totally. Now, this is a multiple line comment. If multiple line comment, you start the comment with slash star and end it with star slash. All right, let's go and try this. Now, if I write here, this is my first code and execute it, you will get error for sure. Why? Because the compiler doesn't know what this code is, what it will consider them as variables, and it will tell you that I don't know what is or what my is or first or etc. Okay, let's execute it and see the result. See, individual invalid use of this in non-member function because this is a keyword. Okay, if I change it to this capital, you'll get another kind of error. See, this is sorry, this was not declared in this scope. So how to write a message to somebody or to yourself, just to remember that I'm writing this code. Of course, this is something professional to write some comments to yourself or to other programmers. If I don't want the compiler to check this or to bother itself with this, I can just put double slash. Now this is called a comment. So the compiler, when it comes to this comment, it will skip it as if it's not there. So if I run now, the program executed perfectly. All right. What if I have more than one line of code? Okay, for example, this is my first code. Okay, or in general, let's say student ID equal 1234, student name equal Ali, and department not equal, sorry, here we are not talking about variable, this is just a message. Okay, department SMIS, for example. Now you have two options, either to come and put next to each line, all right, which is fine. Or alternatively, you just write it like this. Put slash and star at the beginning, and at the end of the message, put star and slash. Okay, so this is a comment. All right. Again, the comment is some decoration. You can call it something complementary that helps the programmer to remember the variables. Like when I define a variable here, ID, okay, I can write next to it, this variable defines the student ID. All right. It means nothing to the compiler because it will see only integer ID. This is for the programmer and for myself or for the people who are coming to read it after me. All right, so this is the first part of the programming, which is the comments. I think I can take it. Okay. To create an example. Oh, it's very long. Right. I'll add it to your slides also, and then share it with you. Here I'll add another slide. Example. Okay. I want it to be like I'm sorry, but I don't want to lose the opportunity. I want to share everything with you. All right, so this is the comments. Next, the include. This instruction, include IOStream. You saw it, okay? This is the code that we've just written, and as I told you, this is the comments, multiple line. This is also another comment, all right? Now the include IOStream. As we said, you need to, this instruction is used to include a pre-written library such as stdlib, IOStream, etc. If you are writing a program that reads values from the keyboard or print values to the screen, you should use IOStream. So this instruction, you can just copy it and paste it and use it directly. Okay, but now I think you understand it. Using namespace std, as I told you, a namespace is declarative region that provides a scope to the identifier. Identifier usually refer to the names of functions or variables. Okay, types, function, variables inside it. This instruction is used to allow the program understand C out and C in. Otherwise, you need to write them as std C out and std C in. All right. So this is also important to simplify the code writing. Main function, again, every C++ program should contain this main function from which the execution starts. So the compiler, when it starts execution, of course you can write any code, but it will go and search for main. When it finds the main, it will start from there. All right. That's why you should have only one main function. All right. It can include all the code by itself, or it can call other functions that are written outside it. Of course, basically for the first 5 or 6 weeks, we write all the code inside the main function. All right. But later, when we start with functions, we will start writing code outside. So don't worry now. Everything will be inside the main function. All the code should be written between curly braces. It means begin, write your code, when you finish, end. It can be of type void. However, integer type is usually used within it to make sure that the execution was correct. Will be discussed later. Return 0 is used at the end of the function main to show that no error was occurred, and all instructions in C++ should end with semicolon except when with functions and when the instruction followed by braces. All right. In general, all the instructions should start like here, for example. There is no semicolon. Why? Because this include doesn't need semicolon. Why no semicolon is here? Because this is a comment. Why no semicolon is here? Because this is a multi-line comment. All right. Why we need semicolon here? Because it's an instruction. Why no semicolon here? Because it's followed by this one. All right, and it's a function. And the rest, of course, are. The last thing is return 0. Sometimes it's missing, sometimes it's written. I prefer to write it always. Okay. This, when the execution, everything is perfect and no error will occur, then the function will return 0. So you can write it. So all the variables that are used in C++ program should be declared, otherwise error shall occur. For example, now let's go there. See, this explanation is important. Define the main function. Okay, beginning of the code block. Print a message to the screen. This using cout. Return 0 if everything is okay, and end of the code. Now the declaration here is written like all variables that are used in C++ program should be declared. You cannot say x equal 5, for example. This will be discussed in the next lecture, but it's good to let you know. Why? Because x is not declared, was not declared, and this you will get an error. I'll show you practically how this happened. Let's write x equal 5. Then cout x. Now if I execute it, I will get an error. Why? Because it will tell me that x is not declared. You cannot use it. It's not declared. See? Error. X was not declared in this scope. So how to do this? I have to decide what type x is. Is it integer? Is it float? This is what will be discussed later. So I think it's better to use integer. So I declared this process called declaration. I declared that x is an integer. Now everything is fine. You can write, for example, x times 2. All right, it will give me 10. Here I got 10, and so on. Okay, so you cannot use any variable unless you declare it. Okay. This is the meaning of declaration. Code format. It's very important to know that in C++, not like in Python or some other programming languages, white space is not important. You can add any number of lines. You can put spaces between the the instructions, etc. It's not a big deal. I'll show it to you practically here. For example, if I write integer x, or I can add any spaces here. It will be the same thing, nothing error. 10. Okay, I can add any number of lines. It gets the same, but you cannot put space between the instruction itself. Now, for example, this, I'll get an error. It will tell me that I don't know what CO is and I don't know what UT is. Okay, see, CO was not declared in this scope. So you can add, for example, here. It's all right. Same execution. All right. Why you need to add this white space? This is kind of formatting or arrangement of the code. Okay. If you notice that when I put this parenthesis, I left some space, right? Here. Although it's not a big problem if I start from here. Okay, I write it like this. But in order to arrange or to make the code readable, it's highly recommended to use spaces or indentation in the function. Okay. In future, when we will use some other blocks, it will be very clear to you. And by the way, every open bracket should, for every open bracket, there should be close bracket. For every beginning, there should be an end. What if I missed this one? All right, I'll get an error. See? Error. Expected parentheses or braces at the end of input, and again to match this. All right, so you have to add this. What if I added more? Let's add another one. Again, I'll get another error telling me that this is extra, expected declaration before this one. All right, so you have to be very careful while using these things. So this is your first program, and I think it's clear. First, you need to include, enlarge it a little bit. First, you need to include, don't forget this hash symbol, include the library, then using namespace, std, this is standard, integer, main, every function should, every code, every program should have main function. Then I declared a variable called x, I gave it a value of 5, and I printed 5 times 2, which is x times 2, and I closed the parentheses. Of course, here, as I told you, you should write return 0. If you don't write it, there will be no errors, but it's highly recommended to write this. Now let's execute it. Done. So this is your first program. I want you to practice this. So see this example, integer x, integer x equal 5, integer x space equals space 5, or all of these are similar. Okay, input and output, we've already discussed the cout. Okay, the cout, but cn will be next. So here include using namespace std, integer main, string. String is just to declare. A few minutes ago, we've written integer x equal 5. So here string name, the variable is his name, equal between quotations. So I can write cout welcome, then name end line. This end line, it means starts a new line. If you execute it, you will get the result. Okay, and remember that cout should be followed with this insertion operator or extraction operator. I think it's enough now. Let's discuss with you a few things before we. This will be covered in the next lecture. Okay, and it's uploaded to your team, by the way. I'll stop recording. Start the discussion.